in just another minute or so. Go ahead and get started now as it's 3 o'clock. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. I am, as I mentioned earlier, Christy Green, an account manager with CPI. Also, I have on the call with me Derek Chin, our director of CX-Solutions, Colin Doggett, a senior project manager with CPI, and Alexis Dwyer, a senior solutions analyst. And of course, our speaker today, Scott Nowicki from Quiq. We do want this to be an interactive session, so please feel free to use the link at the top of the page. Yep, there it is. And it will be added to the chat box, which, the little chat bubble over to the right. It will be added there, so you can click on that at any time to submit your questions. Before we get started with the presentation, I do want to tell you a little bit about CPI. We are a minority-owned business, and we're proud to be celebrating our 35th anniversary this year. We started life long ago as a Nortel partner, then became an Avaya partner after that transition. We have focused largely over the years on the contact center, so about 20 years ago we became an interactive intelligence partner, now Genesis. And we got involved with Service Cloud when it was still Right Now, and we were one of the first partners specialized on Service Cloud in the United States. And about a year ago we teamed up with Quiq for their strength with messaging solutions. With all that said, I'd like to hand this over now to Scott Nowicki, and he can tell you more about himself and Quiq and get started with our presentation. Scott?
Okay, thanks, Christy. Maybe the next slide, and maybe the next one. So, thanks everybody for joining us today. We value our partnership with CPI. They asked us to come on and talk a little bit about some of the basics that we're seeing in the messaging world today. So, quick agenda. We have a short presentation here where we can talk about what we see as the evolution of customer service software, a little bit of basics on web chat and messaging, and then a section that is near and dear to our hearts, and that's asynchronous messaging, why it's become important and why we're in that business. We have a slide or two on who we are. And then we have a handful of slides on some examples of what you can do with asynchronous messaging. And then at the end, I'll go through a very, very quick demo, fairly simple demo. If there's no further ado, that's what we're going to do today. And please ask questions as we go. So, okay, evolution of the contact center. One more, please. So, some of you have been around for quite a long time in the contact center. Some of you probably haven't. So it's useful sometimes to just kind of talk about how contact center software has evolved. If you go back on the far left-hand side, back in the 90s, it really wasn't a contact center. It was a call center. The only real option that you had for customer service was telephone or voice. There were a number of companies out there that really specialized in IVR. And then they started adding customer service components to their IVR systems. And it was all phone centric. They were client server type of systems. You know, it necessitated you hosting servers, putting in a whole hardware infrastructure and a whole support infrastructure just for the software, along with the staff that you had that would use it. Around the year 2000, the internet really took hold. And so the whole industry started to evolve. The idea of having software as a service really got started the very late 90s, early 2000s. And so people, it made it a lot easier to bring in a system and administer it because you didn't have to host the servers. You didn't have to load software. You didn't have to have people administering updates, et cetera. That was all done in the cloud in a software and a service mode. So one of the first companies that you may be familiar with is Right Now Technologies, who was later purchased by Oracle. Later, Salesforce came out with Service Cloud. Zendesk came out. And so what happened was they were able to take about half of that voice traffic and either transition that to email or to web chat. And that was, based upon the effects of the internet and what people could do for customer service. Roll forward to 2017 or so, or 2016, and there's been kind of another change, and that is with people using mobile devices and how frequently the contact is going through mobile. And so what we're finding is that the amount of voice traffic is going down and down, email is going down, web chat is going down, and ultimately the trend is for people to be using messaging, and that's where Quiq comes in. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And we find that we've been told, and we'll show a few stats on this later, but those of you who are thinking about messaging, the time to get on board is now, because by the year 2020 or so, about half the customer interactions out there will be via messaging. Okay, next slide. Okay, let's talk about just a few basics. Web chat, you're probably all familiar with web chat. You've been to an Amazon website, or you've been to, a lot of you probably, some of you may even actually offer web chat on your websites. It's handy for people because they don't have to sit on hold and wait for an operator to pick up a voice call. The customer can initiate it. There's always a chat button, that's omnipresent in what we call reactive web chat. And so, the best practice that we see out there is that, make this icon visible in the same place every time, in the right-hand corner. Put it on every sales or service-oriented page, or anything where somebody is going to need to take some kind of action. Tailor the colors for your brand, and make sure that icon only pops up when there's somebody available to actually have a conversation. It seems fairly obvious, but you might be surprised. And then keep that pre-chat form limited to a fairly limited number of fields. The more fields, more information you ask on the front end, the more risk you have of abandonment. Okay, next. Messaging has really taken hold in the last couple of years, and it's pretty obvious why. It's a very familiar user experience. Everybody knows how to message. It's real convenient. Based upon the age groupings, there's some people out there that never ever call customer service. They don't really like to engage in chat. They understand text messaging because they spend their whole day messaging, or they spend a high percentage of their day doing it. We find that companies using it are getting very high conversion rates and CSAT scores when they use it for business. So what are some suggestions for best practices here? Place a text us in the header and footer of your mobile website. Put a button in there, or a couple of buttons. Maybe put a banner as a large touch target, to encourage people to text you instead of calling. Put a clear action on this one. You see, buy now, need help. They're clear things that people would see. And then kind of the last piece is, get the word out. Work with your marketing department so that people know that texting is available. Instead of just seeing it when they go to their website, put it in your emails, put it in, put it on your, prominently on your desktop web page, other places, so people know that it's available. Okay. So, what are the pros and cons of each? Well, let's talk about web chat first. Obviously, there's no waiting on hold with web chat. It's instantaneous. You can have a one-to-one conversation with somebody via your keyboard. You have the ability to copy and paste. It's private. I can have a chat conversation while I'm sitting in a cube at work where I may not want to have a voice conversation. I can use this while I'm doing other things, kind of in a limited way. And I think that just the biggest advantage to it is there are some people that don't like to type on a cell phone. They would rather use a keyboard. And so web chat is really designed for people that are having a desktop experience. Okay. What's the drawback? Well, just that. It's really good for desktop experiences. It's very impractical on a mobile device. You know, many of you have probably tried to do a web chat on a mobile device. It's not really designed for that experience. There's a lot of, you know, it's just not a, it's, if you look at user surveys out there, people aren't really too happy with using web chat on mobile devices. Traditional web chat, and that's what I'm going to talk about here. People have rolled out traditional web chat with the same type of metrics that they had for telephone calls, and that is we want our agents to get that issue resolved as quickly as they can. Okay, so what happens when you're in the middle of a chat and you're in the office and all of a sudden your boss calls you into his office? You leave that chat, and because of the way people have rolled out chat, you know, think of it as a synchronous fashion, similar to the synchronous way you have a phone conversation. After about 30 seconds or a minute, they're going to say, "Are you there?" And then they'll keep repeating, Have you left us? Are you still there?" And ultimately, they'll stop that conversation. Well, when you come back 15 minutes later after you met with your boss, that session is over. You weren't able to time out it. You have to start it over from scratch. So it's you know, it can be real annoying to people when they start a chat, get pulled away, real life intervenes, and then they have to go back and start from scratch. Kind of the last two bullets. It also relies on the CSR to be good, not just verbally, but also in how they communicate via you know, via a keyboard. You know, I guess their writing skills or their ability to get a message to somebody properly. So it's, some people, it's just not as easy to talk on the phone. And so it can be a drawback, not a huge one, but we see that sometimes. Okay, moving on to the next one, the messaging pros and cons. So a lot of the same pros. It's instantaneous, it's personal. I can certainly do this if I'm in a cube at work and not worry about somebody overhearing me. I can copy and paste. Obviously, there's no waiting on hold. It's private. It's concise. You know, the messages are designed to be quick. So I can have lots of different quick messages back and forth within the body of one conversation for service. I can use this while I'm working on a project. It's great for on the go. You know, we love to tell our favorite story. I have a coworker who earlier this year, he lives in Bozeman, Montana. It was below zero. His wife was out of town. His mother was in the hospital. He had kids that he had to take to school, and his water heater broke down on a day that was below zero. He also had a busy day at work that day, and so he didn't really have a slice of 20 minutes or 25 minutes where he could call somebody or get on a web chat and try to solve his problem. So it just so happens that we have a client in Bozeman who's a plumbing contractor, and he was able, from the hospital, after he spoke to the doctor, to send a text into these folks saying, "Hey, my water heater's down. This is what I think I need." And then he had to run, and he drove to work. When he got there, he was able to exchange another message or two. He stepped into a meeting, came back out. They had sent him a link where he could go in, place the order. He gave them instructions on how to get into the house. And when he got home that day, there was a new water heater. Okay. Impossible for him to do that with traditional synchronous communications because he never had a 20-minute slice of time that day that he could have devoted. So perfect example why today's typical consumer loves to use messaging for customer service. It's on their cadence, it's on their time. Okay. And the other thing too, you can save the number, the conversation. So I could call in for service, or I could text in for service today. A month from now, I can go back in and I can continue that conversation, or I can have it there when I need to go back to ask some more questions. Okay. What are the cons? Well, it's not designed for a desktop. You know, it's designed for a mobile keyboard. So, you know, that's why we traditionally say give the user what they want based on the channel that they're on. If somebody is on a desktop, you use web chat. If somebody is on a mobile device, then obviously you pop up SMS. It's not great for lengthy conversations. So, you know, you need to have maybe a number of messages go back and forth. And then kind of the last two bullets apply for either one of these. quite honestly, I think people have gotten past those so much that they're not really a big concern anymore. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, next. Okay, if you can hear me, can you move on to the next slide? There we go. So why asynchronous communications and why did we get into this? A few slides here to give a little background. A few years ago, somewhere in about October of 2016, internet usage on mobile devices passed that on desktops. That spread has gotten quite a bit wider now. It's not going backwards. So the majority of internet usage is on mobile devices today. Okay, next. Along that same line though, what's kind of quirky is that companies rushed out to build apps, but app installs and updates are dropping significantly. You know, the old days of using a mobile device and having to load an app just to communicate with a brand, you know, customers are finding they don't really want to have to load an app every time I ask a question. I'll suggest to the folks out there that, you know, you probably have 5 or 6 apps on your phone today that you haven't touched in 3 months or 6 months. And I would guess that most people would agree with that. Okay, next. So, you know, what is the trend these days? Well, mobile engagement is through messaging. You know, who out there doesn't use messaging on their smartphone? I mean, the whole world is using it. There are more mobile messages being sent via cell phones than actual phone calls. We can show you demographics for this, but overall, nearly 2/3 of customers would prefer texting to talking. With millennials, obviously, that number goes way up. And the last one is interesting because 2/3 of consumers will spend more if they feel like you're giving them excellent customer service. So this comes back to, I mentioned before, synchronous communications. And so we think of a telephone call as a synchronous communication. I'm locked in for the entire duration of that call. The way that most people deliver web chat, it's the same thing. It's a synchronous type of communication. I'm locked in for the duration of that chat. Messaging, we call asynchronous, and it's not like any other channel that you're using today. In those 2 other channels, in a synchronous communication, in effect, the call center controls the cadence. You know, when I call into my cable TV company and I have to sit on hold, they're in control of my time. Okay. However, when I have the ability to text for service, I'm in control of that cadence. So I can ask a question. Maybe I go to a kid's ball game, and during the game, you know, I've gotten an answer back, and at my convenience, I can keep adding more messages to that conversation. And as long as I get my questions answered in a time frame that's suitable for me, it doesn't have to be immediate. And it allows me to have, you know, breaks for the things that have to go on in my day and still have an interaction that's ongoing, that's suitable for me. Okay. So getting back to what we talked about a minute ago, the good folks at Gartner predict that by 2020, over 50% of customer service interactions are going to take place via text or other forms of messaging. So, you know, as we like to say, most people say that it's looming out there, and the time to jump on board is now. Another proof point, the folks at Aberdeen did a study. What they have found is that companies that are using messaging are outperforming those that don't. There's 5 different KPIs at the bottom, and companies that use messaging are outperforming the others across every single one of those KPIs. So there's proven value to what we're talking about. Okay, next. And you know, what are the other benefits to it? Well, there's higher agent efficiency than any other channel. If you think about it, if my call center is engaged in telephone calls, they can talk to one person at a time. If they're engaged in chats, they may be able to do a couple. We're finding with messaging, based upon that cadence and the asynchronous nature, some people will start a messaging conversation and they'll stick with it, and they'll keep replying immediately. Others will, like that example I gave before, send a message in, drive their kids to school or drive to work, continue that conversation at their leisure, go into a meeting, continue it after the meeting. Because of that asynchronous nature, we're finding our clients can do 5 to 10 customers simultaneously. So huge increase in efficiency, and way bigger even than email. All right, so what is it that we offer? Well, we like to say, communicate with your customers wherever they want to communicate with you. So today we support SMS and text, Facebook Messenger, Quiq, in-app messaging, and we have asynchronous web chat for those people that want to offer a desktop experience. The difference between our chat and what we've talked about so far is that ours is asynchronous. You have the ability to pick it back up and not have it time out, just like a messaging session. So in that regard, we're unique in the industry as well. We also are coming out soon with Apple Business Chat, Twitter direct messaging, WhatsApp is going to be coming as soon as they give us the final business APIs. So any type of channel that your customers are going to want to message, we think we can cover. That's good. All right, who's Quiq? If you remember from our little history of the contact center, one of the companies that was a leader was Right Now Technologies. And so back in the 1990s, Right Now Technologies was one of the first, if not the first, call center or contact center application based in the cloud. The people that founded that company ultimately went public, and then they sold it to Oracle. And so those of you out there that are using Oracle Service Cloud today, that software was developed by the people that founded Quiq. So our founders have now started Quiq with the idea that they want to build the contact center of the future. And so anyone who's using Oracle Service Cloud, we've built an integration into it. We know Oracle Service Cloud as well as Oracle does because our people developed it. But we also tie in with other systems. And ultimately, the thing that our founders have looked at was, just as the internet changed customer service around the year 2000 or 1999, mobile devices are changing customer service now. And so that's where our biggest focus has been. Okay. We've got about 75 clients right now, large and small. Just to name a couple that you'd be familiar with, Office Depot, Overstock.com, Tailored Brands. We have a few big names that we can't mention because they feel this is their competitive advantage. But we haven't found a marketplace or a vertical where people want to service their constituencies better, whether it's external or internal, where we couldn't help them. All right, so what can you do with asynchronous messaging? A couple of examples. First of all, the basics of omni-channel communication or marketing these days, or support, are offer the right channel at the right time, right? Well, that applies to customer service as well. If I'm communicating with you via mobile, I want to communicate via text. I prefer it. I don't want to go through a web chat. I don't want to call you, etc. The other side of it is, if I'm on a desktop and I have a keyboard, don't make me go to a small keyboard on a text device or on a cell phone. So we have the ability to pop it up based upon whatever channel somebody comes in on. We can pop up the appropriate experience. Okay. Reduce costly phone calls. I think everyone, part of the reason why web chat got started was because people were trying to lower the cost of support for those folks that sit on the phone all day. We have the ability to tie in with your IVR system, and the folks at CPI can help with this. And what we're finding with our clients is that customers that offer telephone to text deflection are deflecting anywhere from 20 to 40% of the inbound calls to texting sessions. So it's a real win-win because it makes the customers happier, it's lowering your cost of support, makes your agents more productive, and it's, for us, it's some of the lowest hanging fruit. It's something that rolls out very, very easily, and it provides an immediate benefit. Okay, help your customers more efficiently. This is an actual picture from one of our clients, Men's Warehouse. It's a little small in the middle of the screen, but there's a text us button. And it's just that easy. Add text us to your mobile website and watch how many people start using it. What we're finding, once again, is that 15 to 20% of your customers will choose text. That number, depending on the industry, in some cases is as high as 40% for certain types of transactions. So you're going to deflect a large number of calls, and we're seeing huge increases in CSAT scores as well. This is a really good example of using messaging, maybe in a little different way. I think everyone is familiar with the idea of using outbound texting to give someone a notification when something is going to ship, or some kind of notification in their business. If you've used Amazon, you probably get an outbound message from them that says your order will ship tomorrow. Quiq is unique in the ability to make that a two-way communication. That same text that you got from Amazon will say in big bold letters, do not respond to this, or do not reply to this. If you need to get in touch, click this link or call this phone number. So they're sending you to a different channel. Quiq has the ability to make that two-way. So Overstock.com is a really good example. They came to us last year, and they estimated that 80% of their inbound phone calls during the holidays were people checking on the status of their order. So they used Quiq to send out about 100,000 outbound notifications a day, just with the person's order number and their shipment status. They reduced their inbound call volume by a huge amount. But the other thing they found is that about 1% of the people actually responded to those emails or replied to them. And those went into a service queue, and someone was able to service them better, either answer a question, add an additional order, etc. And what's interesting about this, if you have things like product recalls, for example, or ways that you need to get information to people quickly, 98% of text messages get read within a few hours, whereas a really good email read rate is 10 to 20%. So, we're finding that the message gets to people faster. You can ensure that it's delivered, and they have the ability to respond to it. Okay. Here's a good one for people that are providing product or technical support. Sometimes someone can describe what's happening, and it just doesn't sink in, and there's nothing better than a picture or a piece of video. And on a typical desktop experience, it's not that easy to take a picture, upload it, email it out, do all that other stuff. But everybody in the world knows how to take a picture and text that off to someone. So, we have people that use this very early on in the tech support process. Hey, send me a picture of what you're seeing right now. And we actually, an interesting use case, we had a garage sale or a garage door opener company tell us that when they diagnose a problem with a garage door opener, the most important item to them was the sound that it makes. So they're having people actually send them a little snippet of video, and they can listen to that, and it helps them diagnose the problem. So very useful. Okay. We're finding with companies that they can increase website conversions. There are some people that, depending on the type of product that they're ordering, or depending on the timing, they're on their phone. It's just easier. It's preferable for them to interact with people when they're placing an order. We have an aftermarket auto parts company out there that was a little dubious when they added texting, but they knew it would help them service their clients better. They found their conversion rate went up very significantly on top of it. That it became the highest converting channel that they had. So we'll suggest to you that not only is this a way to help your customer service, but it's a way for you to help that conversion rate for the sales and marketing folks as well. And lastly, a lot of people, a lot of companies out there haven't really talked about Facebook messaging as part of their support plan or part of a marketing plan. The average company out there, you send a message and it says, we'll reply to you within 24 hours or something like that. Quiq can enable Facebook messaging, and it just becomes another channel for your customer support department or another queue. We're finding that there are people out there that use Facebook Messenger very, very significantly. There's some people that use it as much or more than they use their regular desktop SMS. And so it's very easy for us to integrate in, and it's something that a lot of people haven't thought about. Okay, you wouldn't like this if we didn't put a quote in here. So this is from one of our clients at Tailored Brands. I won't read it to you. And that's it. Before we jump into a demo, are there any questions?
We do have a couple of questions here. So let me go ahead and just going to start off with the first one. So when an incident comes via messaging and we allow customers to start a conversation and then come back later to continue, how does that affect metrics such as requiring agents to close incidents within 24 hours?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And later in the demo, I can show some of the metrics that we keep. The short answer on this is that we define a conversation. We measure in the metrics. We define a conversation as it's as starting when a customer sends you their first message, and the end of that conversation is either when the agent closes it out or 24 hours, whichever comes first. Okay, and so all of our metrics, for the most part, and that's configurable, but that's how 99% of our clients do it. So, and then we've created another metric where we can measure. In this example, let's say that somebody had a dozen messages that went back and forth over the course of a 20-hour span. Okay, well, you wouldn't want to show that resolution time was 20 hours. I guess you could, but we've created another metric specific to messaging that we call work time. And so we can show that during the 20 hours that was going on, we actually measure the amount of time that the agent was engaged in the messaging piece of it. And so we can say that it took 20 hours to resolve that issue. However, the work time in there was 4 minutes or something like that.
Thank you, Scott. So the next question that we have is, what if the initial agent is no longer available when the customer comes back later? How will that be routed?
So these are really terrific questions. So we have two things that we could do. We have a concept that we call sticky routing. And so let's say we set up queues, and when a message comes in, it gets routed to an agent. Let's say that an hour goes by, and then that customer responds back. That he sends in a question, the agent responds to it. It takes an hour, and then that person comes back in. If that agent is still available and has openings in his openings, then it will go back to that original agent. Okay. If he's unavailable, then it will go into a queue, and that will get routed to another agent, but that other agent will see the entire conversation that the previous agent engaged in. Okay. One of the things is because our folks came from a enterprise contact center background, they built very, very good routing rules, collaboration, the types of things that you would expect in an enterprise class system were all built in on the front end with our system. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, Scott. All right. Yep. We have a couple more questions here. So another question is, how do we know if the customer will come back and continue the conversation, or if perhaps they found their own solution, i.e., how do we know when to close the ticket?
Yeah, I think some of that is experience, and some of it is best practices, that we can help with, because we've been involved in 75 other clients. We do have the ability, and when you see a demo, in the chat world, typically somebody will engage in chat, and sometimes they'll just sit and wait for that person to answer. And we don't encourage agents to do that. If a conversation sits in the queue too long, someone has gone dark, then we tell them to put that conversation on a hold status so they can get more new conversations in their queue. We typically, we work with our clients, and you can set configurable rules on how long someone is gone before you would close a ticket. But typically, the 24-hour window seems to be a good one.
All right, and a couple more questions here. Can we have certain hours available for messaging like chat has?
You can. What we find is that while people send in a chat and they expect somebody to answer it right now, we have the ability to have system generated messages. So somebody especially in the messaging world, somebody could send in a message at midnight, and we can reply that says, our agents are busy, we'll get back to you when we open up at 7 o'clock in the morning. And because people are used to the asynchronous nature of messaging, they're fine with that. CSAT scores are fine with that. And so you can also have the button only pop up on your mobile website during an hour when somebody is there, just like a chat button.
All right, thank you. And last question, my company has just started chat a few months ago. How long should we wait before starting another channel like messaging/SMS?
You wouldn't like me if I didn't say this, but you might as well start now, because it's a separate experience that layers on top of what you're doing. And we don't think we'll cannibalize it, but if we do, I think you'll find that you're not going to eliminate the people that are going to chat. What our customers have found, and in fact, I just talked to one of our retail customers the other day. They had chat. We have a lot of companies that have phone, they have chat, they bring in SMS, and then when they take a look at metrics a few months later, they find out that we didn't really steal anything away from chat. We're stealing away from the volume that was going to telephone, which is what we were trying to do with chat to begin with. And in fact, by offering messaging, we've even increased the number of people that are using chat.
All right, very good. So that seems to be the questions that have been submitted. So we're ready for your demo.
All right, give me a minute to change gears here.
So I'm going to pass over the screen share to you, and it'll be ready when you are.
Okay, give me 1 second. Okay. All right, you can all see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, hopefully that was yes. Okay, I'm going to do a very simple demo, because I know we're in the interest of time. We don't have a lot of time left. I'm going to do a couple of things fairly quickly, just to give an idea of the types of things that you can do. If anyone at home would like to see a deeper demo, or we'd love to just correspond with anyone after this meeting. So let me explain what we're seeing here. I'm going to play a couple roles in this demo, and I'm going to do it fairly quickly, but I'm an agent And so the first thing that you see here, I'm going to lay out kind of the geography of the demo. The first thing that you see is the agent UI. So this is what the agent will see when they log in. Okay. Next is a Facebook page. It's a real Facebook page. This is a demo page that we put the CPI logo into. I'm going to view this as a visitor. You may or may not have Facebook Messenger in your strategy today, but we'd like to start with this because it allows you to see both sides of the conversation without me sending this in via my cell phone. While your visitors typically would look at this from a mobile device, for demo purposes, I'm going to use Facebook Messenger from a desktop. Okay, just so you can see both sides of it. And the next tab is our chat UI. It's a web page. It's running on a web server just because that's how chat works. So we'll do a web chat from this tab as well. Okay, and that's pretty much the layout. So let's get started with a simple example. I'm a customer. I've got a question, and so I'm coming in via Facebook Messenger, and I'm just going to say, actually, I'm going to start really simple. Okay, so we've sent in a question, and you'll notice that the Quiq page is blinking, and you'll notice that a few changes have taken place. So let me explain what you're seeing. On the top left is the status bar. Right now, I'm available as an agent. I can change this to unavailable if I'm leaving for the day or if I'm leaving for lunch. I can make this current conversations only. So I'm going home in 20 minutes. I don't want to take any more new conversations. I'm just going to finish the ones I'm working on. Right now, I'm in available. You'll see over here that question has popped up. So that's the agent conversation control panel. An agent can see their conversations and know which ones to prioritize. You can also set SLAs to ensure agents are meeting response time goals, and that's just one of the configurable SLAs that we have in the system. And then in the middle here, you'll see this is the agent conversation panel. It mirrors what an agent would see when they would be messaging with their friends. So it's second nature to them. It's very easy to teach people how to use. I also can see the previous conversations I've had with this customer. So before my SLA goes out, I'm going to accept this conversation. On the left-hand side, you see that it was green. That will tick down to red and orange as I get closer to my SLA. So at this point, I'm engaged in a conversation as an agent. I can type in a response if I want to, or I can use what we call a snippet. It's similar to a keyboard shortcut where I can provide a response with a single keystroke. So in this case, I'm going to just click on a greeting. I can also do anything that I could do on a smartphone. So emojis, video, phone. Let's see. Let's just put an emoji in here. Okay. And so now going back to Facebook, you can see that they've gotten my response. So I'm just going to type in when I type better. And as an agent, it just so happens I've got kind of a canned response for that one. So I can click on this, and there you go. So that's a really simple example of a conversation. But let me review what we did. We started a conversation via Facebook. The conversation was routed to an agent who occupies a queue in the Quiq platform. The agent was able to accept that conversation before his SLA expired. And then he was able to use a snippet or a shortcut to send a greeting. And now the conversation is back in the customer's hands. Okay. So we also talked about the adaptive response coach, or let me talk about that real quickly. So as we get more messages in here, basically what the Quiq platform is going to do is, based upon how quickly the cadence or how quickly people are responding, we're going to prioritize those conversations, and the people that are responding the fastest are going to go to the top of the queue. So we tell our agents, you know, work from the top down. We'll prioritize them for you. Okay. So we talked a little bit in the questions before, what constitutes a conversation? And so in our case, some companies out there charge by the message. We don't do that because we think that creates a disincentive for people to ask one more question or to service people a little bit longer. So all these messages make up one conversation. And once again, we define that as it starts when somebody reaches in, you know, or has a question. It ends either when I hit this end button or 24 hours later, whichever comes first. Okay. Okay. We're going to do a chat real quickly. And so we have a chat button down here. Oops. There we go. And we're going to ask just for some basic information here. And I'm going to say, okay, and now you see we have two conversations in the agent queue. This is the one that's most recent, so it's popped up to the top of that queue. Once again, I can accept it. And now you can see that as an agent, I can be working on multiple conversations at a time. Okay. We also have brought over the information that we took from that web form to make it easier for the agent. So I can see that which welcome form it came from, the person's name, email, anything else that we want to put in here. It's going to help me know where this came from and service this person better. So I'm just going to make a quick reply here. And you'll see that we're engaged in a couple of conversations now. Okay, so that's kind of the basics of a few conversations. Let's do something a little bit more fun now. We talked about how we can divert phone calls to text, and so I'm going to go into an IVR session here, and let me explain how this works and what we're going to be doing before I do it. So you can set this up where when someone calls, a pre-recorded message that you record basically says, our agents are busy. If you would like, you can engage in a texting session. Would you like to do that? Yes or no, or hit 1 for yes. Would you like to use this phone? Yes or no. And then we can even collect some additional information. Can you describe the nature of your problem or why you're calling us? And so I'm going to dial in. I'm going to put this on speaker. Hopefully everybody can hear this, and we'll just demonstrate how this works.
Thank you for calling our company. All of our agents are helping other customers. The average wait time is 4 minutes. You can continue to hold, or an agent can help you using text messaging. Please press 1 to use text messaging.
Okay, hit 1.
We will text you at your current number. Press 1 to use this number, or 2 to choose a different number.
All right, I hit 1 again.
Please tell us the purpose of your call. For questions about an order, press 1. Product support, press 2. Returns, press 3. All other inquiries, please press 4.
Okay, I press 3.
An agent will text you shortly. Please watch for the text message on your phone. Goodbye.
Okay, so you'll notice that this is flashing, and on my cell phone I've actually received a text. So I'm going to respond to that. And give me 1 second. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so now I have another message in the queue. I'm going to accept this so that my SLA, I make my SLA. And you'll see a little bit of information here. So it's a voice call conversion. Customer needs help with a return. You'll also notice we sent out a system message here. So remember we talked earlier about how if somebody sends in a text after hours, you can send, you have the ability to configure system messages, and so that people know that you've gotten the message and that they're just not sitting out in the ether, but that someone's going to respond to them shortly. So in this particular case, I have a problem with my garbage disposal. I'm going to say too bad. And once again, as a service person, I think I'm going to ask for, how about if you send me some video so I can diagnose your problem, okay? So, and now that has gone back to my cell phone, and this actually, I'm gonna demonstrate one other capability here with this response. I'm going to say, I want to return. And at this point, there's two things I'm going to do. I'm going to ask for an order number. And you may have noticed on the right-hand side over here, we've built what we call UI extensions. So these are places that we can tie into back-end systems to provide more information for that agent. And so what you'll see here is that I can do an order lookup here, and it's going to show me, based upon that order number that they sent us, I'm reaching out via a UI extension, and I can bring up that order. Okay. Now at this point, I'm going to demonstrate one last thing, and that is that I had another window lurking in the background, and that is a manager. And so I'm going to go in, and let's say that as the customer service agent, I've never really worked on a return. So just as in the telephone world, somebody could put you on hold and say, can I get somebody else to, I'm going to get somebody else to help me. Here we have the ability to start a collaboration. And so I'm going to go in, I'm going to search for somebody who can help me. In this case, it's a manager. And I'm going to say, need help. And I'm going to send that off. In the background here, which I forgot to show you before, is that here's a manager. So this is what a manager is seeing. And so all of a sudden now I've had this message where I need help. And as a manager, I'll say, okay. And so now the agent can go in and he can transfer this call. And so I'm going to pick who to transfer it to. I'm going to transfer it to the manager. The manager gets a request to transfer it. He's going to accept it. And now the manager sees that entire conversation, and he has the ability now to either take it over. I'm working on this now with the customer. this was all seamless. The customer has no idea that this went on in the background. But that's how we built the ability to collaborate, transfer, et cetera, into our system. So one last thing I want to show everybody from the manager side. We talked about metrics. So we have a number of reports that we built in. And I'll just talk about these really, really quickly. So we have a manager portal here that people can go into. At the top, think of this as, you know, just a number of kind of daily metrics that an agent is going to be looking at. High level operational data. If you remember that average work time, here's how we keep track of that. We scroll down, we can see you know, more granular data. So I can see open conversations, I can see the agent performance, I can see anything that was closed, and it allows me to preview any open conversations. So if I take a look at this, here's one that's been open for 10 minutes. Wonder what's going on. So periodically throughout the day, I can go in, I can do a preview, and I can actually see the conversation that's going on. So it gives me a chance to coach a rep, help them out. And so I have the ability to either just, you know, join them, whereas I'm in whisper mode, I can coach them, or if it's completely off the rails, I can take over. Okay. And then going back to the reporting, we do the same stats historically, and then we also keep all closed conversation information. So across a lot of different variables. And then, so that's the data that we keep about our own conversations. Most people then will take that through an API and put that into a BI system where you can, you know, mesh that with your other CRM statistics. And kind of the last thing is, if you have Oracle Service Cloud or Salesforce or Zendesk, we can push those the information into those on an up-to-date basis because we've got links built already. Okay. So, okay, that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover today. Are there any more questions?
You know what, Scott, it does not appear that there are any more questions, but if there are any questions, what I want to do is I'm actually going to just kind of share this email address. So if there are any other questions, you know, please feel free and send an email over to Christy Green. I have her email address up here on the screen. You know, Scott, we definitely appreciate you helping us out with this, and you know, we certainly really appreciate everyone spending the time joining us today. So on that note, we appreciate everybody joining us, and everybody have a great afternoon. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.